Dish Soap has been featured on this channel numerous times. He is consistently one of the best players in the North American ladder, and as always, we're probably going to be VOD reviewing him once again. He's sort of, again, kind of the Magnus Carlsen at TFT. This guy is very fucking good at TFT, consistently top of the ladder in North America, and he's just an absolute fucking beast when it comes to playing the game. Today, by the way, for those of you who don't know, or maybe you're new to the channel, it is day 3 of daily postings on the channel. We are trying to post a YouTube video every single day until December 10th for the Vegas LAN event. This way, we're trying to challenge ourselves to try and become a content creator full time. And this 2-3 month period is going to be our way of really sort of trying to, seal the deal and try to get content online full time. But enough of that. Let's get on to today's video. Okay, so here we go. We are inside of Dish Soap's game. Now, this game in particular, I found this to just be an incredibly interesting game. Was this like a spectacularly well-played game? Not necessarily. Was this like a spectacularly interesting game? Not necessarily. But it's just these small, minute decisions that just kind of accumulated over time that made me kind of go like, wow, this is a very interesting game to be watching together with you guys, and I really wanted to share it with you guys, so that's why we are here. We are currently inside of Orin's Forge, so we are getting that Orin Anvil later on as the game progresses. We do have the Cassiopeia start with a tier. Nothing really that is that interesting in terms of our shops or anything. We are able to buy out the whole shop here. We do have a potential Kale / maybe Tristan a reroll game opener just based off of the shops that we're given. We are given the bow as well as the rod, so Ginsu's is definitely on the table. But typically, if you do have Ginsu's as an opener, you are sort of leaning more towards Aphelios. We are, you may have noticed, able to buy out the whole shop, meaning that this is going to either be a 5-component start, maybe a lesser duplicator included as well. We are going to be given a lot of extra components to start off the game, and here we are given 5 components, so we just buy out the whole shop. Now, notice we are actually running the Bard Legend. I don't really know why. I was eating dinner while I was watching this game, and this is sort of the part where I started to tune in, and I didn't catch any reasoning as to whether or not he thinks Bard is good or bad by any means. I don't think it's necessarily bad. Most of Bard's 2-1 augments, Caretaker's Favors, are pretty good. Caretaker's Blessing, I believe, which is the prismatic version, it's also a very strong prismatic as well. The only one that kind of sucks is the silver one, but I mean, not every legend has decent augments at 2-1 except for, I think, Orin off the top of my head. So, I mean, even then, Orin just is the meta choice at the moment. So, anyways, Caretaker's Favor, What Doesn't Kill You, and Healing Orbs. So, What Doesn't Kill You, again, I still haven't found any lines that really particularly enjoy What Doesn't Kill You. I still don't really know if it's just sort of people just haven't really tried it out enough yet, or maybe you really only run it if you have something like a 2-1 Piltover start, something like that. So we're definitely gonna reroll the middle here. Healing Orbs is one of those augments that is super good late game, not that great in the early game. Hard to derive the most value out of it in the early games. We're going to be rerolling middle and right side here. And we get Slayer's Resolve, Silver Ticket. Again, none of these augments are actually very good. So I wouldn't be surprised if he actually rerolls the right side here and he hits Winds of War. Now, out of all of these choices that are given to us here, we don't have a lot of good choices. I'm going to be honest. Slayer's Resolve is already kind of rough. It's not a very good augment, and it actually wasn't even a good augment during the Kale patch when Kale was one of the most meta 1-cost reroll comps. And if it wasn't good then, it's definitely not good now because they haven't changed anything about it. So Slayer's Resolve is not an option. Silver Ticket is kind of an option where, again, we do have some units that are available to us for a Kale reroll line or a Tristana reroll line. But Kale right now is really, really shit at the moment. So that's definitely not an option. So really, Tristana reroll is sort of the only thing we can really think about or lean towards, at least based off the current units that we have. Winds of War is a very interesting augment. Winds of War from this spot, I don't even know if I would ever take this augment. I personally don't think Winds of War was very good. I don't think they've changed anything about it. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but nothing's been different about this augment or, has been patched within the new patch. So I don't really think it's a good augment. If I remember correctly, this augment was averaging low 4s, 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 before the patch hit. So this probably isn't a really great augment, and it was actually that average during the Invoker patch. It might have been a little higher during the Invoker patch specifically, but I don't remember. I didn't remember looking at this augment specifically during that patch. But out of all these options, really Silver Ticket and Winds of War, these are kind of the only 2 options that are available to us here. I'm kind of surprised he rolled over the Bard augment, to be honest. That's supposed to be the safety net, but here, I guess, just by whatever means, he decides to take Winds of War, which is a really, really interesting choice. I think if it was me from this spot, I think I probably would have ran Tristana reroll with Silver Ticket because You have like Gunblade plus Valve. That's probably what I would have taken in this spot, but he actually goes with Winds of War, which is really, really interesting. So it's a Winds of War game. It's a Winds of War game with a single Cassiopeia. That's our only Invoker, and we're put on with a Maokai. We level up Maokai 2, 3 Demacia. Really interesting spot to be in. We do see that Frodin is actually also in this lobby as well with a Pilt over Heart start. Really interesting. So there are some people who are definitely going to be like winning out pretty hard in the lobby if they're able to hit. Frodin definitely is one of those candidates. And this is an interesting spot to be in. We only have one Invoker, so you could be like, okay, maybe we just hard force Invokers. But as you have seen, or maybe you didn't catch it, somebody already took Invoker Crest. So we are already contested for Invokers for this line, and that is a bit of a problem. Usually when you are taking Winds of War, at least, I'm going to pause the VOD real quick and we're actually going to talk about this. Winds of War, typically you actually run it, usually playing around vertical Invokers, which I feel like is pretty obvious. But in case you don't know, you actually... So you don't roll at 6, by the way. During the PBE, I know I bring up the PBE often, but that's actually when I research the game the most. During the PBE, you used to run Soraka carry with 3-star Galio and 3-star Soraka, but this actually isn't really the case anymore. People have sort of realized that 3-star Soraka is just not really a unit. It's actually just not that good. So what you actually end up doing is that you actually play Galio 2, and this unit is actually so strong during the mid game that you're able to actually tempo with this board, go level 7, and then roll for Karma 3 and Galio 3 on 7, potentially even Lysandre 3, and these are sort of like your main outs whenever you're playing Invoker reroll. Just to, you know, back up the statement a little bit too, if you look at the stats here, this is a Masters Plus within the Advanced Explorer over on tactics.tools, but we see that Galio 3 stars with a Soraka 3-star, yeah, it does average a 3.76, but when we split by star level here, you can notice if we only have a Karma 2 on our board, we're averaging a 4.85. So this comp actually really heavily relies on you making sure that you hit that Karma 3 to try and win out. And actually, when we lower the stats here to Soraka 2, the average, yes, it does dip down pretty significantly. But again, if we split by star level, we see that Karma 3 is in the cards. It's a 3.61. Chances are that the average is like this because you just didn't... A lot of people just ended up not even finding the Karma 3. And they were stuck with Galio 3, but Soraka 2 and Karma 2. And that's where that 5.49 average hits. Invokers at the moment is just not a very good comp in my opinion as well. It's one of those comps that really relies on hitting Karma 3. It's a Karma 3 or bust comp. And you actually cap out with Ari, which is really cool. I probably should have mentioned that as well here real quick on the board. As you can tell, we have Sork and Ionia open, and out of every unit in the game, only one fits the bill, Ari being that, and we actually cap out here at 8. Sometimes you'll see people running Invoker emblem as well onto the Ari here, so you can actually drop one of the Invokers. Typically, it is Soraka, and you actually have an extra unit slot open, typically for Freljord, something like a Sejuani here, just to fortify the front line a little longer, plus the overall shred on the board is super, super nice. But that's usually the line that we are looking for. Now, again, though, in this game that we are watching from Dish Soap, we are contested for Invokers. Now, Invokers, when contested, is a really shit time. It is a terrible time. So, we already need to start thinking, okay, we know somebody has Invoker Crest. How are we going to cap out our board? How are we going to be able to find a line that will let us, you know, still play this Winds of War Galio, but also, like, you know, just so that we don't have a bad time. And I'll give you a moment to think about it, because for me, I was watching this, I was kind of stumped. I was like, what are you going to do in this game? Because, you know, Invoker Crest, you're contested for reroll. One guy, one of you hit Karma 3 with very low HP because you're contesting each other for the units, or you find an alternative line. And I was like, I have no idea what the fuck you could play in this spot. And turns out that Dish Soap's plan, as you may or may not have guessed, is Vertical Demacia. Which is weird as fuck. Because Vertical Demacia is not a good comp. It has a lot of really terrible weaknesses. The most glaring one being that your only real damage source is a Lux 2 and nothing else. So it's really difficult to try to find a decent line that actually utilizes Galio within the comp. Specifically Vertical Demacia. And like actually just being able to win out with it. Your only damage source being a Lux 2 is not a good time. Yes, you do have a bunch of radiant items that do come out, but unfortunately that isn't enough damage. So here, actually, let's just pause the video real quick. We are given the Orange Forger 2-5, and we're given DFG, Hull Crusher, and Death's Defiance. Now, as we said, we just talked about this before. Vertical Demacia is sort of the line that we are leaning towards. So how do we play around Vertical Demacia? Again, Lux is our only damage source, so you might be thinking Deathfire Grasp is the way to go here. But no. We talk about this all the time on the channel. Whenever you are playing TFT, you have to play for now. If you play for later, that later might not come. You have to play for what's already given, what's already on the board here. So here, we are actually going to choose between Hull Crusher or Death Defiance, and Dishsoap goes with Hull Crusher. This is the most strongest spike that he can find for the early game right now, and playing around this Galio that he knows he's going to try to tempo with, this is the best and correct option to take. You could make an argument for Death Defiance, though, you definitely could, but Death Defiance grasp is very difficult to garner a lot of value out of it versus having a 3-item Galio for our front line, which, as you can tell here, is just never fucking dying. But 3-item Galio with Winds of War, Titanic, Titans, Radiant Warmogs, and a Hull Crusher. It was a Radiant Gargoyles in the last one, but still, you get the idea. Fucking insane. So we have a very, very strong front line, and yes, even though we do lack a lot of damage within our back line, if we have the unkillable front line, we don't have to really worry, because by the time OT hits, then everything can clean up for itself, and we are chilling. Currently on that 4-win streak, and with Demacia, we are sort of streaking out pretty comfortably, to be completely honest here. Again, the 3-item Galio 1 with Winds of War is a really strong Giga Tank. It's just making things very, very easy for us. Demacia is, as you may or may not have guessed, usually a early game board, but even then, most people don't really play Demacia in the early game because there's not a lot of really strong Demacia units that you can find. KO2 is sort of the only damage dealer within Demacia within the early game, so it's a little awkward to say the least. The earliest time you find a damage source is usually with the Sona, and Sona is more of a supportive unit rather than a damage dealer, so it's always really, really awkward. Sorry, I'm going to rewind the video a little bit because I noticed the UI was covering the shop, so you couldn't really see the roll down. But we're going to roll down here, and we're going to try to look for Galio 2. Maybe try to look for another Demacia unit to play for to fight Demacia. Find a Lux on 6, which is really interesting here. And we are chilling with 5 Demacia with the Demacia Spat. So right now, our spot's actually looking kind of interesting. We do have a JG Shojin Slam for our Lux. We actually have a 3-item Lux with a 3-item Galio to continue our streak. Now, you may have noticed he did level on 3-1 because he was trying to preserve the streak to level 6, and he decided to roll down because, again, we're trying to preserve our streak. And we still have 20 gold left over, which is really, really nice. Here, going into the 3-2 augments, we're given Small Forge, Branching Out, and Unified Resistances. Now, the high roll option here is Branching Out. Because imagine we hit another Demacia crest. Suddenly 9 Demacias in the cards, and 9 Demacia actually can win out a lot of lobbies. Actually, decently strong. 9 Demacia, actually, funny enough, during the PvE, I don't know if you remember this or not, but it was actually one of the strongest verticals in the entire set. They had a hard nerf Demacia. We actually haven't really seen Demacia ever be as dominant as it used to be. But 9 Demacia is still a very, very strong chase trait. But again, it's very difficult to find. It's like 9 Shurima. It's almost impossible. You rarely ever see it. We are given also Small Forge and Unified Resistances. And out of these options, Unified Resistances is sort of the way to go here, in my opinion. But it is a little difficult to position because we are playing around Demacia. We do want to try to get those aura buffs, if you will. So Unified Resistances is okay, but quite honestly, out of all of these, you definitely reroll middle. You can even reroll the right side if you want to, but you don't really have to. There isn't anything here that sticks out that's like really, really strong. Bronze ticket is also offered as well, but bronze ticket, again, it's not that great. We are sitting on 30 gold, which isn't a lot. We could roll on level 6, but that probably is not the goal. We are trying to play around 6. We're trying to play around vertical Demacia, so we're trying to push our level and push our tempo. So in the spot, Dishsoap actually takes army building, which is really great here, and he takes it and actually starts rolling again. So even though he rolled on 3-1, he's rolling again on 3-2 because he knows for a fact that this board will not maintain his streak. So he's going to roll here, finds the Taric, finds the Galio, and then immediately uses the duplicator to hit the Galio 2. And now we're sitting on this board again with 5 Demacia, which is a really, really decently strong mid-game board. But with this board, again, it's going to fall off pretty fucking hard, which is sort of a problem, right? It's sort of something that we are going to be a little worried about when it comes to the mid to late game. Like, how do we actually go from this spot and actually win out the lobby, right? It's hard to say. Ideally, we do want to hit this Galio 3. We do want to hit, like, Lux 2 at some capacity. And like I said before, even when you're playing Vertical Invokers, usually you are rerolling at 7 rather than at 6 for the Galio. So what's the out? Right? And you can't just be like, oh yeah, 9 Demacia is the out, clearly. Like, what? 9 Demacia cannot be an out here, at least not realistically just yet, because 9 Demacia requires you to go level 9. Unless we're able to find a Fawn at level 8, and even then going to level 8 is a little difficult because we're re-rolling, right? We're trying to find this Galio ideally at probably, again, level 7. it's going to be tough. Maybe there's a 2 cost we could reroll in this spot. It's really hard to say. Again, Soraka used to be the most premier 2 cost to reroll, but unfortunately that is just not really an option because 3-star Soraka just really isn't that great of a unit. It's usually just a waste of money. So unfortunately here, a lot of the good components get taken out. We are stuck with the rod here, and it's hard to say what we were really hoping for here. Maybe a sword for GS, but it's really difficult to say here. And now we're just repositioning, just like fondling the units around, but there isn't much to really say here in this spot. We do have a decent start here. We do have army building. Galio 3 is potentially possible, but again, we have seen very little Galios, even though somebody, yes, in our lobby is playing Ravenous Hunter, and 2 costs are being taken out of the pool. Being contested sucks, and we just haven't been able to natural any Galios. And actually, whenever you're trying to think about playing around a reroll comp, you should always keep this in mind. If you're not finding the units that you're trying to reroll for, you should probably instead just push your lead and push your tempo if you happen to be in a spot such as this one where you are in fact win streaking. Sometimes people will sort of get caught up in the fact that they take like Ravenous Hunter, for example, and then they notice somebody else has Ravenous Hunter, but then they just stay level 6 and just roll instead of just trying to push tempo and trying to push their lead instead, and trying to use a Warwick 2 to tempo themselves into a much stronger board. Sure, yeah, you are sort of playing down a gold augment when late game comes in, but you should have been able to preserve so much HP by pushing your tempo with a really, really strong 2-star 2 cost that would have let you just, you know, secure like maybe a 4th, maybe a 3rd, maybe sometimes even a 2nd. There's actually a different Dish Soap game that I know I watched way too much Dish Soap, but there's actually a different game where he actually took Ravenous Hunter and he actually stayed Warwick through the whole game. And I think he went like 2nd in the lobby, which is absolutely insane. Just truly one of the best of NA. Here we do push to 7 and we are rolling down here a little bit. We are on a 10 streak, which is super cool. And we're going to keep rolling down here, trying to find different units to tech into. And we're able to find 7 Demacia. And we have a Kale 2 on our board, which is just so odd. Here we do see him trying to juggle the Radiant items, trying to get that 3rd one onto the Sona. It's not going to be picking it up because Tarek does in fact have a technical full item with the Demacia crest, while Sona only has a component, so a full item does end up breaking the tiebreaker, and so Sona unfortunately does not get the Radiant item, but that will be fixed soon enough. Unfortunately, we do start to lose our lose streak, and even though we're 7 Demacia, we can start to see where this comp is really starting to fall off, and we're sort of having a bit of a difficult time trying to keep our board online, as we are going to start to bleed out at 4-1. Here we are given Seeing Double, return on investment, and not today. Obviously, Seeing Double, you're going to reroll this every single time. This augment is just not very good. We are given Gifts from the Fallen and Morning Light. Now, Gifts from the Fallen, as you may or may not know, is one of the strongest gold augments that you can pick up. It's a very strong generic augment. It keeps your options open, but we are also given Morning Light. We also do only have 2 Bastion on our board, it being, I believe, the Poppy 2 as well as the Tarek. So Morning Light is definitely not an option here, but Gifts from the Fallen sounds really, really good. But if you remember what I said earlier, 9 Demacia becomes an option if you manage to get a Fawn. So return on investment is surprisingly a really interesting choice here. But if we choose return on investment, doesn't that mean that we have to commit to the Galio 3 and we have 0 Galios that we're sitting on? Not necessarily. We are level 7, and yes, there are a bunch of Galios taken out, but we decide to take return on investment in this spot, which is so fucking hype. We are going for somehow 9 Demacia as a potential out. And even if we don't manage to hit 9 Demacia, we still have a Fawn to play around, which is going to be really nice. Now, what is the goal? Return on investment, usually when you take return on investment, you need to start re-rolling. Not immediately, but on the level you choose to take it, usually. Otherwise, you play down an augment for like a stage, right? Which is not very good. In this scenario, Dish Soap's goal is to try and re-roll for something else besides Galio. Has it clicked yet? Dish Soap's plan this game is to re-roll Sona along with Galio, which is a really interesting decision to make here. So he's gonna go for Sona 3, Galio 3, and try to play vertical Demacia in this sense. If he manages to stumble upon another Demacia crest, 9 Demacia is actually within the cards because we'll be able to go level 8 and try to play from there. Obviously, we do need to find another spat eventually, which is going to be very difficult. It's already 4-2. It's very difficult to find another spat, but that doesn't mean it isn't possible. And this is something that's really interesting. Dish Soap has sort of situated himself in a position where there is opportunity to potentially high roll, which is really, really interesting. If you're taking gifts from the Fallen, 9 Demacia is forever not an option, unless you're able to go 9 with this board, but that would be basically impossible. Froden cashed out with a 56 stack D-Hex, Ravenous Hunter players, Invoker players, a lot of really strong boards are really coming online. You need to understand that going 9 is basically impossible, especially if you're playing a board like 7 Demacia, which is just going to fall off really, really hard. It's basically off cliff. So here, as we can see, plays in the Froden, gets absolutely smacked down. Surprisingly enough, it's a little closer than you'd think it is. It's like a 2.5 loss. Really, really nice here. And actually, we get onto the carousel here, and we actually see our potential to win out. A fucking spat on the carousel. So the spat's actually on a Scion. It's very unlikely that we get it here, but surprisingly enough, somehow nobody wants a free Scion. Yes, it does have a spat on it, which kind of sucks, but Dish Soap is able to find it. So here we do start to slowly roll. He actually skips over the Garen, which is really, really interesting. He skips over the Garen here because he decides that, hey, instead of upgrading this Garen to Garen 2 here, he thinks that trying to find a Jarvan 1 is more important, so he doesn't want to upgrade it just yet. Interesting decision, to say the least. I don't know if I fully agree with it. The idea being is that if you pick up a Jarvan, wouldn't you just replace the Kale or the Poppy? Probably the Kale, right? I don't really know why you wouldn't make the Garen 2, in my opinion, but I mean, hey, he's rank 1 and I'm not, so it is what it is. Actually, I don't even know if he's rank 1 at the moment. I think Milk actually might be rank 1. It's funny because Milk tweets every single time he manages to hit rank 1, but Milk is sort of a people sit kind of guy where he just sort of sits at rank like 2, rank 3. Still, incredible player. But then Dish Soap will just kind of go on like a bit of a lose streak and he'll lose like 200-300 LP, and then Milk is like, oh, hey, I'm rank 1, because he decided to sit at rank 2. And then Dish Soap, I think he like sent him a jab on Twitter that was kind of like, you're just gonna tweet every time like I go on a lose streak or whatever. But pretty funny stuff. Anyways, moving on into the game, it seems that we are actually 3 Sonas off, which is really interesting too. You could actually also make the argument that because we are rolling 4 3 costs, maybe we also go for the Garen 3 as well. Although I will say, I don't think Garen 3 is that strong, especially with Demacia. Usually he gets a lot of his sort of beefiness from Juggernauts, and as we can clearly see, we don't have any Juggernauts with our board. So as we can tell though, we do get dropped a bunch of different components here. Unfortunately, no cloaks, so we are going to try to reforge something here into the cloak. We do decide to go with the bow because there's no good way to kill it, and we reforge here, and drumroll please, moment of truth. Sorry Sean, that's my roommate in case you heard me. It's a tear. Unfortunately, does not find the cloak, which really fucking sucks. It would have been really, really cool if he saw the cloak here and actually was able to play into 9 Demacia. Really unfortunate that that is the case here, but as we can see here, he does roll down a bit more aggressively here, trying to find the Sonar 3 because he wants to try to maintain his HP as high as he can, because he knows that going level 8 is not really within the cards anymore because there's no real incentive at this point, but also because he wants to try to hit this Sonar 3 as soon as possible, as well as the Stark 2. He actually does not duplicate the Sonar here, which is kind of interesting, but his reasoning is just simply, if I need to hit this Taric 2 eventually, either I hit Taric 2 or I hit this Sona 3, whichever comes first, and then duplicate the other. So there you go. Now we're sitting on a Sona 3 board with Lux 2 and still the Galio 2. Again, we've seen very little Galios, and keep in mind, we duplicated a Galio in order to get our Galio 2. So we really are not hitting this Galio 3 at all this game. It's just really not within the cards. So we are going to try and think about, okay, we're probably not hitting Galio 3 this game. We should probably just try to push level and see what happens. We fortunately do have Strategist and Juggernaut, as well as Multicast are now within our board because we did tech into the Teemo, as well as, what's the other Juggernaut that he teched in? Oh, Juggernaut Crest, my apologies. Juggernaut Crest as well. So his board, like, on paper looks really strong, but as you can sort of tell as the fights are going on, he's on a 5 loss. He's still bleeding out. So trying different positioning tactics, trying to see if anything will work out. And unfortunately enough, as we can soon see, as the fight progresses, it does look kind of good. It does look kind of good, but again, our only real damage source is this Lux 2. It's just really not that great, and we just keep on losing, we keep bleeding out. We do unfortunately not see any Demacia Crest off the carousel, which would have been, again, very lit, but unfortunately that is just not something that is you know, within our reach. And we do pick up this Invoker Crest here. Just, it's basically a fawn for us. And maybe we can put something else with, oh, actually, I don't even know if it's really a fawn for us. But, oh yeah, no, it just gives us Invoker. So we do find this Galio, which is really interesting. We are still at level 8. And yes, we do get Invokers with Galio. But again, we're sort of just bleeding out at this point. We do have the Azir on this board, which is sort of an interesting decision. It's just to get a little more, just a little extra juice of strategist AP onto our board here. But again, this board just doesn't have that high of a potential to cap out. Even though, yes, we are zone at 3, we are sitting on a Galio 2 soul for our front line. Luckily enough, though, people are dying and we are actually able to secure our top 4. But again, this was only possible because we were able to maintain our tempo throughout the early game. We do find a Jarvan 2, which is really interesting here. And you would think, again, 2-star Lux and 3-star Sono should be enough to start winning out some fights. But just like your fundamentals might be telling you, if your front line is too weak, it does not matter. The enemy team will fall down and crash onto your carries and nothing can be done about it. And again, it's kind of interesting. Even though there's a Galio 2, it actually stays alive for quite a long time throughout the fight. But again, we lack too much damage. It's just not possible for us to win now and end in a 4th. Now, again, this wasn't the most spectacular of games. But I thought it was very, very interesting how Dish Soap noticed immediately that he's contested for Invokers, and instead of bitching about it and complaining about how nobody is scouting, nobody's balancing the game, he says, fuck it, let's ride or die a different type of line and see how it plays out. And again, had we had just found one more extra cloak, it was very possible for us to go probably first place in this lobby playing something just absolutely insane like 9 Demacia. I hope you guys learned something. Take care, guys, and happy clapping.